moved to the Biltmore. You saw this place, right? It was kind of a mess a bit. What did you see, though, bringing something back to a community that was new and that you saw potential?
100 people go through this hotel. I looked at it, fell in love with the idea of the Biltmore, and I've fallen in love with the building and what it represents. But you can't duplicate it for any reasonable amount of money. Hurricane Andrew was a big event, of course, to the community. And we had a laid out plan. To Hurricane Andrew, we were feeding 250, at least 2 meals a day. And we had to hire, about 300 people. And so we hired in mass, and then we sorted through. We could serve the community. We got the electricity back early. We got a call from Florida Power and Light and wanted us to put up some people they were bringing in from Georgia Power. You know, we had some trepidation as we started to get fully involved and fully inserted into the hotel. Found a lot of problems, as you would expect.
Welcome to the 6th episode of Miami Unveiled, a show about the city you think you know and the people you've never truly seen. It's not the skyline, it's not the headlines. This is the real Miami and the Coral Gables, bold, bruised, and burning with dreams. Now, Miami's not just a place. She's a force of nature. She carves you, scars you, and she tests you. And if you survive her, she makes you part of her story. Today, we tell the story of Gene Prescott, not just a hotelier, not just a name whispered in the boardrooms, but the man who gave Miami and Coral Gables the room it didn't know it needed. Not just a ballroom, a room with a light, a room with welcome. It's a room for everyone at a time when elite clubs still closed their doors. Frankly, in 1992, even still, when Jews, African Americans, and even many Latinos were kept out. But Gene built something different. He didn't talk about it. He didn't try to replicate a private club. He tried to build a public trust. And frankly, when Gene came, he didn't come here to impress the establishment. He came here to be a part of the fabric. And in doing so, he changed the texture of this community and this city itself. And then Gene didn't talk about diversity. He just lived it. Instinctively, without fanfare, long before it became trend or policy. He grew up on a cattle ranch in Idaho, came from grit, values, and a good family. His father wasn't a politician, but he was engaged. And Gene grew up around people from all walks of life. And when I say that, I'm talking about farmers, business owners, political voices from every station, every status. He listened. He always watched, and he learned. And that early exposure shaped his understanding of leadership, respect, and the quiet kind of influence that doesn't need a title to matter. And for Gene, it was always family first. And the Prescott legacy, it wasn't built on money or ego. It was built on service, work ethic, and most importantly, treating people right. People. And when it came time to build, he was a business person that did it with very little capital early on, but he did it with vision, he did it with soul, and he did it with relentless belief. He never waits for backing. He's built from the ground up. And of course, Gene likes to talk about numbers, but he saw people, all people, and he believed everyone, no matter where they came from, always deserved respect. And in Gene's world, title never defined him. Status doesn't separate you. What matters is how you treat people, what you carry, and what you give back. I've watched Gene move through the city for decades. He could sit with a president at noon and share a quiet moment with the groundskeeper before dusk. He doesn't lead with noise. He leads with stillness, the rare ability to read a room and read a person in seconds. He can be tough at times, don't get me wrong. He tells me often when I talk too much or interrupt him, Menachem, stop. But you know what? He's not only softened with time, he's softened with everybody. He's a father, a family man, a steward of the Prescott legacy. And more than anything, like I said earlier, he's always been about people. And in this city where nothing is given for free, survival with your soul intact is the greatest victory of all. Gene didn't just survive, he thrived. He made Miami and Coral Gables more livable for all of us, community service and more. This isn't a hospitality story. It's not a business story. It's a Miami story, a Coral Gables story about what it costs to belong, what it means to survive, and the grace it takes to never drop it. And if I sound like I understand survival, it's because, frankly, I've carried it too. I'm not just your host. I'm a son of the city. I certainly know what it means to fight for your place, to struggle at times, to be challenged inside yourself and inside these streets. This is the Miami and the Gene Prescott you never knew. This is Miami Unveiled. And of course, I'm your host, Fred Menachem. And Today, I'm not just welcoming a guest. I'm sitting across from someone who helped shape the soul of the city when no one was paying attention, and someone who's always had my back when I needed him, even when he probably didn't know it. And he showed up, whether it was for a meal, a fundraiser, a room, a charitable event, and for me. And he always did it with love. He's someone I've always loved. He's become family to me. And welcome to someone who represents everything good about this community. My friend, the hotelier who brought the Biltmore back to life and gave it back to all of us. So welcome, my friend, whose family, Gene Prescott.
Fred, thank you.
I love you, man.
I love you too. Thank you for the gracious words.
They're real. So, first of all, it's great to see you. I'm so happy you're doing this. How did that introduction feel, by the way?
Over the top, but thank you.
Yeah, but Gene, it's Fred Menachem.
Right. No, it's Fred.
It might be over the top, but it's real. And then, that's you. You're quiet. And I think you don't think about yourself like that. I talked about diversity, and it's not, you just are who you are. But anyway, how's your health? How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. Getting a step slower, unfortunately.
Right?
Yes.
That goes with the, right? It goes with the territory.
It goes with the age, yes.
But you look good. And I wanted to read you something, man. I just, this place is history for me too. I mean, if these walls could talk, but really I've grown up here because of you, from charitable events, from politics and all of it. But listen to this. You ready? This was just now, by the way. Mr. Prescott treats everyone equally, regardless of who they are, whether you're CEO of Google or a parking attendant. He'll always greet you with a warm hello and genuinely inquire about your day, demonstrating authentic concern for your well-being. Few individuals who have achieved Mr. Prescott's level of success consistently treat others with such dignity and respect, but you can absolutely count on him to do so every time. You know who that was from? It's just an employee. I walked in and I mentioned it, and they said, "Can I write something?" And I said, "Absolutely." So, let's talk a bit and about the Biltmore. And I say it's the living room, right? It's the space, and we talked about it, brought together, race, class, and culture. Why don't you talk for a moment, Gene, about, I don't know if you ever felt this, how you gave the city the room back, and I say you came in, right? To talk about the moment coming in, it was how important that was to you and what it meant.
Well, we closed on this about 2 weeks before Hurricane Andrew. And Hurricane Andrew was a big event, of course, to the community, and it was to us. And we had a laid out plan with about 20 people. We were having one meal a day. And after Hurricane Andrew, we were feeding 250, at least 2 meals a day. So it was a big change. The other side was that we had a 3-month ramp up to full opening, hiring people. And we had to hire, about 300 people. And so we hired in mass, and then we sorted through. The good thing was that, and in the community, we could serve the community. We got the electricity back early. That's a story in itself. But what
happened? Tell me.
Electricity. Story?
Yeah.
Well, we got a call from Florida Power and Light and wanted us to put up some people they were bringing in from Georgia Power. And as I said to the guy, I'd love to, but we can't open the doors. And we've got a few rooms. Our doors, they were not electric at that time. And I could tell he was so frustrated because he was desperate for some rooms. And he said, "No, I'll see that you're open. You got electricity." And we got electricity early, right, in that afternoon. So we were with electricity and moving ahead. And it also was that the people that we had initially, the first 6 months, 9 months, were mostly related to recovery from the hurricane. Right. We had a lot of insurance adjusters. We had a lot of people from construction people. So it wasn't a full-blown hotel in the full sense like we've had, but it was a good introduction to the community. because we had many families of the first responders of Coral Gables,
Right.
fire and police, whose family they had here. And in fact, that's when I met our chief of police, Ed Udak. He represented the city.
Ed was the chief of police.
No, he was
Right.
he was a solid policeman,
Right.
that
Right.
young fellow. But Ed's done such a good job for the city, and he's a good friend. So it was and then we came into the time of the Summit of the Americas, and that, as you remember, was where we had, 34 of the heads of the countries from the Western Hemisphere. Only Castro was absent.
Well, thank God. Right. Let me stop, if it's okay. Let me stop you for a second, because I think you came. Let me just go back for a minute, because the hotel hadn't operated for a few years prior. That was more than a few years in the 80s, and then it stopped. When did you first make that transaction, or whatever? What year? What month was that? Because
Well, it was, as I was saying, it was a couple weeks before Hurricane Andrew, which was in August. So, but the bank the bank being Barnett Bank, had repossessed the hotel, and they had kept it open so they wouldn't trip the provision of the lease,
right,
kicking them out. So they had a skeleton crew here, keep the electricity on, do a little bit of work, and they had a couple of functions here, being F&B type functions, but it was, for all purposes, completely closed.
Did you ever listen? We don't need to get, there's so much I want to talk about today, but I think for a moment, you came in and, really at that time, still trying to figure out, you really believed in it was more than just about a hotel. I mean, frankly, for it could be profitable. I mean, it was crazy at the time, but I know, there was always a bit of struggle, trying to figure out where, and, without getting into all that but how did it feel when you walked in and then Hurricane Andrew hasn't? And I say this because historically, right? Think about this. Hotel was always a welcome in World War II and a hospital. But how did that feel for you when you're walking in and this emotional event has? Because I know, what did it feel like and taking over a place like this emotionally?
We had some trepidation. And as we started to get fully involved and fully inserted into the hotel, found a lot of problems, as you would expect with a 100-year-old building. At that time, it was 90 years. But so it was troublesome.
It was, right. But you did it with love. You still opened the doors. I know you had to bring in all these people quickly.
Sure.
And so, but before we get to the Summit of Americas, I want to go back. I want to go all the way back, Gene, right from the beginning. And a lot of people don't know this. Peripheral. We talked about it. But I'm going to let you do the talking, surprisingly enough. Talk to me about, the original roots, Idaho and the cattle ranch and sort of that trajectory for a minute, your upbringing, the values.
Well, I grew up in a small community in Idaho, and we had a ranch. In fact, my brother and I still have the ranch. He runs it on a day-to-day basis. But cattle, so there was a lot of us working on the ranch. In fact, my dad bought some land, and the first year that he bought some cattle, 9 head of steers, and they were wild, and they would go all over the country. But we felt we were ranchers, not just farmers. So, and since then, that is where I grew up, and then I went to the University of Idaho before I got to
Carnegie Mellon, right.
Carnegie Mellon.
Right.
Yes. So, but it was a ideal, low key, very nice family, all of those things, and a stable community. So it was low key.
Your mom, grandparents?
Yes, mom and dad. Dad had been very successful, and you mentioned it, very successful in business and in social type of activities. He was president of the Idaho Cattlemen. He was president of the Charolais Association of the United States. At one time, he was president or the chairman for Nixon's for president, because you might remember Nixon didn't trust the establishment.
He didn't trust anybody. Right.
That's true. And so he had this parallel organization. So Tom, my dad, whose name was Tom, he was quite involved with that. And of course, it was fertile ground. He had Nixon carried the state by 62% or something. But it helps, as you know, from your political background, when you got the fertile ground and people are leaning that way.
So, for a moment, because first of all, you grew up. I mean, you never felt like it was hardworking, right? You were out there, right? Right.
Oh yes.
4 a.m. just kind of right.
Well, maybe not 4 a.m.
Right, but
every night after school, we used to go out and work at the ranch. Yeah, because we bought it and it was kind of run down. So we did a lot of that work, and then we started to get, as I say, cattle, which take time and attention, as you know.
Of course, and I think that kind of sort of, good values. I mean, I know you grew up Mormon, not religious, right? But it was.
Well, my family is still quite religious.
Right. No,
my brothers went on a mission for the church. All my siblings were married in the temple.
Your grandparents.
Yes.
What was it? Give me just a quick trajectory, because I don't know a lot of that story.
On the father's side, Grandpa Bide, Prescott side, grew up as a cowboy, left home when he was 12. My dad said he never thought his dad, my grandfather, felt fear. He went broke. He had 2 bad winters, went broke, and then he was a town marshal. And my grandmother has told me stories. He used to bring prisoners home to eat, but and even murder suspects. So, any event, I didn't know him, but my grandmother I knew, and she used to write poetry, and had been a postmaster of the local community. So they were active. And she used to be quite active on burying the dead. She was a strong Mormon. Then on my mother's side, they were more traditional farmers.
With not wealth, probably, right?
No,
hardworking,
yeah.
It's so Idaho, though. They were in Idaho, or they came to Idaho?
They came earlier. My dad's parents, they had been Mormons, and they had immigrated, some from England, and in fact had crossed the plains. Her grandfather used to go over and lead these folks across the plains. Anyway, that's kind of his background.
So I want to move on a bit, but give me your early life, right? How do you think that shaped who you are today? The values, the work ethic. Like, what would be
I'm sure that my work ethic was informed and assisted by that type of treatment, example, and in practice. So certainly got that. Certainly got the fact of having reward. You work harder and you get better yields and get a bigger calf crop. So let's move on, because there's so many things I want to talk about, Gene. But you went to University of Idaho, of course, right? Yes, I did.
What'd you study?
I studied philosophy and then industrial engineering.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, okay. My brother-in-law was an industrial engineer. You know that? Oh, wow.
I didn't know your brother-in-law.
Yeah, Lee Carlinski. You know Fred, I think.
Yes.
His brother, but Lee, that's married my sister, my best friend. Yeah. So Carnegie Mellon afterwards, studying.
It was like an MBA. They called it industrial administration, but it was at the beginning, the eve of the computer, and Carnegie was quite at the forefront of computerization.
There's a story that I love, and probably a lot of people don't know it. And I think probably, and I should let you, but I have speculation always. I read people like you. I think you probably know that. And I miss a lot of things, but the substance. And you have a story there because you didn't have money. And I want to let you tell what you learned. You lived in public housing, and you learned something very significant that you hadn't been exposed to. And we'll talk about that for a minute. I think that probably had something to do with never talking about it, but diversity, your willingness to embrace, tell that story.
So didn't have much money, and we went into public housing and had one child at that time, and then had a second while I lived in Pittsburgh. But it was about 95% black at the time. And in fact, that turned out to be very worthwhile experience because it was during the time of turmoil and the boycotts of organizations and the department store. I've forgotten which name of the department store, but I thought I entered into saying maybe I'd have to deal with that as I got out of the business world. But instead, I got to really enjoy and understand the black community. And it has been helpful in terms of understanding of that. So
it changed you probably, right? You didn't know the history. Growing up in Idaho, not many African, right? Not many African.
No, they were not.
But you had a real experience. Probably, I imagine that made it so not even, you didn't talk about, I know you a long time. You just lived it.
Yeah.
You never talked, but that had a big impact on you.
It did have.
So you see people differently, obviously. You just see people for who they are, and you always have. But I think we probably should, by the way, you don't want to talk about legacy and all that, but I guess we should probably talk about business, right? No, really your trajectory, because that really molded you and took you to where you were able to take on this mission. So talk about Italy, your early career, what you learned, sort of how that.
Well, after Carnegie, I went to work for, it was then a Big 8 accounting firm, Tushaus in Cleveland.
Right.
Got my CPA certificate, and then I went to Italy. I'd met an Italian fellow when I was going to Carnegie, and they had us, that was the time when America was held in highest esteem, thinking we knew how to run businesses.
Did we?
The U.S. that was then at the end of the Vietnam War, so it called into question. But it was an experience in Italy was spectacular. I stayed there almost 3 years.
You thought you were going to do it like 1 year, right?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah. Ended up staying longer. And it was as you manage in another culture, and in the case of Olivetti, they couldn't fire people for all.
That's right. That was insane, right? That was that affected you for life when it came to.
Yeah, and so you had to manage. Look, you could discipline people, but you had to discipline in different ways, rather than hold over their head that they were going to fire them. And it ended up having 29. I remember 29 people that worked for me. So I ended up learning Italian. I could speak it fine. Never did get so I could write it well. But,
right.
Yes. So great experience in Italy for me.
But that also lended to culture, right? By the way, where was it? What town?
It was the northern part.
Are you in the north?
And it was called Ivrea, which
near Milan.
Near Milan,
yeah.
Milano and Torino, and then it's up toward the Val d'Aosta, and where the Matterhorn is. And it was Olivetti had been in fact, they had probably the most concentrated group of very smart guys, and mostly guys, some women. But then the reason why was that Olivetti, being Jewish, had not been occupied by the Nazis.
Oh, it was Jewish for him? Oh, interesting.
And as a result, they came out of the war with their factories fairly intact, and they just exploded. And the old man Olivetti, as he was known, was spectacular in wanting great talent. So he had smart people, and it was really the place for people to work.
But Italian Jews also lent to you when you came. I mean, all of this stuff lent to you coming to Miami, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Jewish community, the African American. What was, let's talk, let's continue to, because I know there was the collapse of applied devices we talked about, which you learned about. And I think it talk about that, because I think that lent to, you walked into the Biltmore, right? You had to walk into a bit of a mess financially. Tell me about that, what you learned there, because there's public humility. I mean, it was complicated.
Well, so I decided I didn't want to live in Italy the rest of my life, even though they were gracious to offer me that opportunity, being Olivetti. But so I came back and lived in Princeton initially. And then I met someone who was started to work for a company, and the reason I met him was that the fellow who was the CEO had taught, was an adjunct professor at Carnegie, and so I went to work for that company. And after a couple of weeks, the CFO, I was the controller, CFO had another fellow and I, my colleague, come in and he said, well, I don't think you're going to go to jail because you've only...
But that was a little organized, let's say that, right? It was,
no,
not
he
you.
was saying they'd been cooking the books.
Right.
And so we ended up the company. We ended up going and had the bank called a loan. And the headquarters of that company was in Stamford, Connecticut. And the plant that we were manufacturing was down in Long Island City, New York. And I mean, I went down, I saw the workers, they didn't believe me because the bank had yanked our bank account and some payroll checks bounced. So they wanted someone to choke, and I was the one that they saw.
And so I have a question.
Yeah.
I mean, you've done so much before you got even the hotel with cold storage. I mean, you still own a facility in Jersey, but this is my question, because it wasn't your failure per se. It was the failure of the institutions. But how did that, you think, made you? I mean,
well, look,
what did it teach you?
When you go through a time when it's so tight on money, and you can see what has gone wrong, you've got to learn not to commit those same sins again. So it was useful. I like, for example, my managers to have gone through a chapter or near chapter, because you learn lessons that are useful in regular business.
So, because I want to talk about so much, and you know, there's the cold storage, and we'll do this again to talk more, but initially there was a time you were in travel. So get to me for a minute, because this was the trajectory with Seaway Hotels, Sheraton Sand Key, Alexander Hotel. I'm saying all of that. That's where it all started, right? Travel wise. What was the nexus there?
Well, I started to oversee for this Italian fellow, as I was trying to describe to you, a man called Sindona.
Okay.
And he'd been very successful. He ended up being controversial. He was known as a Vatican banker, and ended up with a lot of problems. He came over here and bought the Franklin Bank in New York. Anyway, the story, the reason why that's pertinent is, so he had a travel business and he put me to run it. And it was called Pierre Bassetti.
Right.
And we had offices in 3 or 4 cities, plus the office in London and in Milano, Italy. So I really got to know the travel business. But I saw then that was where it wasn't a sustaining business. When I say that is, you couldn't build well equity. And,
right.
And look, you had you and all your competitors are selling the same product. So I decided and looked and found the hotel, the Sheraton Sand Key, and it turned out to be a perfect time because it was owned by a Canadian, and he was having trouble in Italy, and Canada was having trouble. So bought that, and I've had it ever since. It's a lovely beachfront property.
You still have it?
Yes.
So let's move into the Biltmore, because I mean that was key. And again, you saw this place, right? It was kind of a mess a bit, but let's be realistic. Financially, it was disaster at the time, right? And what did you see, though? Not just personally, too, because I know that you were connected to not just the business side, but bringing something back to a community that was new and that you saw potential in. What was happening at the time?
Well, my bank was Barnett Bank, which is the one who had repossessed the hotel. So they came to me and said, look, please look at this, Gene. And they had 100 people go through this hotel, and they couldn't get anybody to bid. So I looked at it, fell in love with the the idea of the Biltmore, and they made it attractive. Purchase money mortgage they extended to me, and that's how it was.
But what did you see? I mean, think about
Well,
it.
look, the building itself, and I have fallen in love with the building and what it represents, but you can't duplicate it
Right.
for any reasonable amount of money. You could, look, some people have tried to do it, but
It never was.
never worked as well. So, in fact, it's been, as you might know, in the history of the Biltmore, not many people have ever made money. We're the first ones to be able to make sustained profitability.
And obviously it took a bit, but there's something. I think a lot of business people, and we've talked about this over the years. Of course, you have to be successful in business when you see potential, others see ruins, but there's more to that because there was very little capital. You've always been able to see potential, or opportunity, but you also had a very strong ability to do things with very little capital, right? Very creatively. We
didn't. And when you don't have capital, you got to be creative.
Right. So how did that work with the Biltmore?
Well, it was that I put more money in, so it was a low entry fee because the bank was quote desperate, and secondly, that was the way my modus operandi, which was low capital. So, and I did put money from Sheridan Sankey into this business. So.
But eventually it's 40 million, right? I mean, I'm saying eventually put into the business, but
yes, no.
it was working with the city of Coral. They weren't putting a lot at the time, right? It was negotiating with the city of Coral Gables. They had the 99-year lease, right? Talk about that for a minute, because I think probably people don't understand the.
Well, we assumed that it was the lease, and assumed it from my predecessor company, which had gone into a chapter, but we have still, I don't know, another 50 years or something.
But Gene, I want to, talk about people for a minute, because your story and what was the trajectory when it came to civic healing? You weren't from this community, right? You saw something, but it was more than just a business, right? I mean, you. Oh yeah. You wanted to.
And I really enjoy the greater Miami. They are different ethnic
You
groups.
did. You always.
Yes, and the Cuban invasion, so to speak, with many Cuban.
Sorry, I interrupted you, and you're going to yell at me. I'm kidding. No, but it's a Menachem thing. I can't help it sometimes, right? But and I don't. The funny thing is, I don't think you've ever thought about this, because you are. I think about it because I know inclusion was never a strategy for you. It was, you walked in and you were like, what is going on? And that was a nexus, right? This community, 1992. Latinos were starting to be here in numbers, but not power per se. Still pushed out Jews, all of it, African Americans. But you came here, hired, diversely, brought in. You were the nexus. You were not going to be a part of that world, right? The world that was still restricting. But who at the beginning? You weren't part of this establishment. It was this was a small town. People don't know that. Who did you connect with? I'm saying community-wise, like personally. Also, who were some of the mentors or ones that?
I don't really remember.
I mean, it wasn't. It was, you were alone though, in a sense, right? Yeah,
and then reached out to the community. And the Biltmore, since we get people to come, it's a nice mechanism to meet people. And this was when the Summit of the Americas came here, and I wanted to have it here rather than be over on the beach. So,
But you look, 94, right? You came here, and I don't think we need to get into that whole trajectory, but you knew somebody who was working, not somebody you'd hire, who connected you with that world. You hadn't been here that long, a year and a half, 2 years.
Talk
about the trajectory of the whole Summit of
Americas. Around and work. And so, in fact, I ended up hiring Tony Rodham to help me, and he was helpful. And and that's how I got really to know President Clinton, because his brother-in-law. So,
but by the way, nobody, people watching, we have young viewers. Tony Rodham was Hillary Clinton's brother, and so brother, right, and so you did. I'm curious about something. I've never asked you this. Were you ever really intimidated or feel uncomfortable, like underneath, like dealing with this all of a sudden, having all these people? How did you feel about that?
No, not so much. I mean, the one who was the strongest minded was Hillary.
Right. Oh, God, right.
After I had first time I really met her, and it was at a Israel Bond fundraiser.
Oh, wow.
And I went up and I was with Tony and Hillary's mother, and Hillary said, "Look, I'd like to talk to you, Jane." So she looked at me and said, "We're glad Tony's with you because you're going to keep him out of trouble."
Well,
right?
Tony was getting a bit of trouble back
Yes.
then. Right.
And if you need something, call. But she was a formidable personality.
Do you know, by the way, we never talked. My dad was chair of the accountants division of Israel Bonds at the time. He died in 92, unfortunately. I think you knew that, but I didn't know that story. Now, I met Bill Clinton when I was, I went to University of Alabama, and I was always engaged in politics since I was a kid. And so, me, I didn't, I was doing some advanced stuff, and, I'm just Fred Menachem, right? I walk up to him, and he was a character back then. He loved it, but what was it like early on, Bill? Bill was a different person back then. He was young. He was fun to hang out with back then.
He was fun and, as you say, very engaging. And talking about meeting people, and he has a phenomenal memory. He would remember Fred, and you were at the University of Alabama. I mean, talk to people and talk about their kids. And he didn't have someone whisper in his ear. He just had that ability to remember on people. And he would be, I remember one time he came, I'm getting a little off the subject, but he came here, he was from New York, he was late, and his advanced people said, "Look, don't get him distracted. It's like 2:00 in the morning." But we still had some people that were around and wanted to say hello. He spent 45 minutes talking to them, and he loved to talk to people and to interact with them.
I think it's so important you bring that up because, I knew Bill as well. I was younger, and people always say, "Oh, no, it was strategy." That's not true. Bill Clinton loved people, and Bill Clinton would stay, like you said, all night. He would talk, didn't matter, the guy at the donut shop, the guy, and I think you saw that, right? You witnessed that.
Oh, yes.
In the hotel. And I think so. Let's talk for a minute because Summit of Americas, explain like a little bit of what it was, because that was the first Summit of Americas, right?
First summit, and it was called by President Clinton, and we had two presidents stay here. The President of Mexico.
It was who at the time? It was no, it was, oh my God.
No,
it was Zedillo.
It was a Z.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we also the President of Argentina. He'd come, and he was separated from his wife, and he had his daughter, right, who was a wild one. And
his daughter was a wild one, you said, right?
Oh, yes. And then we had, so Menon was, and then up here, actually in this room, we had the president of Mexico. And they were just going through, in fact, it ended up, he left a day early because they went through a devaluation of their currency.
That they devalued it, and that's when NAFTA, they started work, right? I mean, a lot of, there was free trade. They were talking about all that. I mean, a lot of
trying to see about establishing it, and we, of course, wanted it to be here in Miami, but that never got done.
No, I know, but how did it feel for you? Because by the way, I pulled footage from Woolstead Archives. I got to send it to you, and I saw the rooms, a lot of it here, and the best was, this was, and I think, look, Summit of Americas took place, right, formally in a lot of places, but I think this is the nexus. First of all, you talk to these leaders, right? This was the nexus of where so many things happened. There was the formal side. And then, Gene, I sat in how many rooms raising, it was a fundraiser, of course, but I remember sitting with Harry Reid, with Clinton, with everybody, just sitting in so many little rooms here. I mean, you were I think the consummate hotelier. I'm not sure that exists. Things are different, but you personally, you were sitting at tables with them, right? You have relationships with everybody. It was nonpartisan, but how did it feel? Because, I don't know if you have a story or something. I don't mean to put you on that. I have stories that these walls can talk. We're not going to tell those stories, but all joking aside, there was so many things that I think manifested themselves legislatively, nationally. We talked. So talk to me a minute about how this place became really a power infrastructure, not partisan in many ways, and I don't mean politically so much, but from a legislative perspective, just the personal relationships. How did those manifest themselves?
Well, as you know, politics are quite personal.
Yeah, of course.
So the question of how do you make an impact? How do you meet people? Now it helps that the Biltmore is here, because then we get a lot of politicians to come through,
Right.
and you can talk to them. I could talk to them, establish a relationship. And we also needed to raise money because the building was needing of capital improvement. And we went to the state and the federal government to raise money. And we had good response from our elected officials.
And look, thanks to you, by the way. I mean, you remember, right? I was a young kid, but I was a bit formidable, right? I mean, I would just put myself out there, and you always let me. You treated me, look, there's something, and I want to talk a little bit about people who stayed here, but first of all, Tom's going to kill me some. We'll talk about that later, but how many, so charitable, and I know, by the way, I always paid my bills. I found a way, whatever I was working with, but most people, and I joke about that, but very charitable, and look, financially it's just tough, but there were people doing fundraisers here all the time, and they weren't always, sometimes bills, got not paid, and eventually you were like, you know what, I'm going to, just support these. But first of all, talk about that for a minute, because I think, first of all, civically, and I want to get to that in a moment. I don't want to go there yet, but so engaged civically, even in the early years. Talk to me about that a little bit, the charitable stuff that had gone here, all of that, because this was not just about politics. It was about community. How did all that manifest itself?
Well, that was one. I feel that we as a hotelier should do that, and particularly the Biltmore and being its status in the community. So it was not only for the political side, but we wanted to be positioned as saying it's where important things are discussed. So look, there's beautiful properties over on the beach, so they're some of our main competitors.
Who was that? What are we talking about?
The hotels on the beach.
Oh yeah. But that was right.
And so, how do we distinguish ourselves?
And how did you distinguish yourself? By the charity, right? By becoming a formidable part of the community, roots on the ground, right?
And where those political events you mentioned was helpful, and we got good publicity from having Harry Reid being here.
I spent a lot of time with Harry Reid back then. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And by the way, he was a senator. For folks that don't know, I mean, he was
majority leader,
right,
in the
Senate.
He was
and
from Nevada.
Harry Reid. Talk to me. And look, a lot of people, the Biltmore has always been such a ingrained part of this community, but you do it very quietly, right? Unlike others, you not this promotion, and there's a lot of people who stayed here, and look, I know you can't tell stories, but maybe there's some, but more importantly, movies filmed here. I remember Stallone was here, right, doing a movie. There were celebrities. Talk about some of the people who stayed here, maybe the impact they made for the Biltmore, because so much has happened.
We got good press from important people, and we had from, as you say, movie stars. We had a couple movies made here.
Hey, by the way, just so you know, we're joking, but we got Tom in the background, your son, blowing in my ear, which is fine. Tom, who was it? Spit it out.
Disclose the information.
No, I don't want stories. Listen, I probably have to tell you, Gene, I was probably involved with some of those stories. These walls could talk. I mean, different times. And I mean, I'm backtracking, but I learned this from Alex Spinell. So as you know, I was Alex's, head of fun or political for years, but I don't know if I should tell this story, but I used to say, Gene, listen, can you give me a suite? And at the end of the quarter, I thought I was the king. Different times, right? Everybody would come with their checks and this and that. But all joking, there were a lot of people there certain people, so many people as a hotelier come through, you are personal with all of them, right? But you have certain close relationships that I know even now. Who are some of those relationships you built over the years?
Well, certainly President Clinton's, and it continues. Obama came here, and
Jeb. I mean, Jeb spent a lot of time here.
Well, Jeb has his office here,
right? Yeah. Jeb Bush, by the way, for his listeners.
Jeb.
Jeb's a character. He's like his mom, Barbara Bush, a little bit. I think the side, right? Jeb takes the little side.
He's good. He vetoed one of our appropriations from the state. And then when his brother came here, and George, when he was president,
Bush,
and then so I told George, some President Bush, and so we were riding around out at the golf course. And he came back and he said to Jeb in front of me, "You should have given Gene that."
So for a minute, and I'm sidetracking because we love Jeb, right? Jeb reminds you of Barbara Bush. I mean, Jeb will say something. Even that time when you were having lunch, he sat down. He said, "Stop being so neurotic" or something. I remember that to me, right? And I said, "It's part of my DNA, Jeb. What do you want?" But over the years, at the beginning, Jeb was confusing to me, right? He was like, "But he's a great guy, as you know." But talk to me about. I mean, first of all, such a starter, but George W. I mean, I love George, by the way, over the years, but forgetting the political side of it, what was George like? President Bush like? I love the guy, character.
He was good. I didn't get to know him as much because he only came 2 times and stayed here and golfed and all. And his father had been here.
Of course. By the way, President George Herbert Walker Bush, which is you had a relationship with Bush, right?
Yes.
What was so? I'm backtrack. I'm sorry because the Bushes are like the Kennedys. Like there's so much certain families that politically and without getting to the politics, really good values and all that. And obviously Reagan wasn't here, or
no.
Was he? No, but Bush was the oldest one who came. You spent time with Herbert Walker?
Yes.
Sure.
Walking around the property, not only here but then over on the West Coast. He came to St. Petersburg where I had a hotel, and and then he came, and then Carter came a couple of times.
Right.
Yeah.
There's
a story on Carter.
Yeah, give me the story on Carter.
Well,
Come on.
Carter
He just passed away, of course, President Carter.
Was you're looking, as you know, in terms of having some nexus, something to talk about.
Right.
He had just published a book, a poem. So I read it to be able to talk about it. Now, in truth, I found them terrible, but I found one.
Right. No disrespect to right.
No,
they weren't so great.
They were not high literary content. But I then found one, at least, that I thought was really,
it was okay.
good.
You
so I
found
can
one,
talk about one with President Carter, yes. But he wasn't as loose as President Clinton or the other president. And, of course, Gore came here several times.
Oh, Al Gore came here several times. By the way, probably during the recount. That's all right with the Chads.
Yeah.
So we're talking about Bush, Gore. Let's just go through it. I didn't intend to go here. We're talking about presidents. I mean, we're talking about United. Like people don't realize this, and the chance that you were able to personally, and I think that's important. This hotel was about a civic part of the community. People came here to golf. They love play, right? So we have Carter. We talked about. We have. Gore was a different character. I talked to him a lot. So give me just a quick, couple, minute on each of these presidents. So he was vice president, but Gore? Yeah, Gore was like.
Well, Gore wasn't the most friendly.
Right. No. Right.
He wasn't as warm, and the only time when I got to spend some time with Gore was I went up to Washington to a fundraiser, and he did the raising of money, but Congress is in session, and he was standing by to see if he needed to go there to cast a vote. And he talked, and he for the only time I saw him, because he was very scripted.
He was very, he didn't get off.
He was kind of uptight, yes.
Right. So we have Gore. Of course, Clinton. You were very close with Clinton, right? Clinton was the best to hang out with, right? And George W. But Clinton was fun. I mean,
Clinton was fun. I'm not a golfer, so I couldn't get really close to him, but yeah, no.
But he spent a lot of time. Who did he play with on the course?
Different people,
right?
Including who's the big fundraiser?
I'm trying to look. Gorge.
Oh,
Chris Gorge. Hi, Chris. Right, exactly. Right. No, Chris. Right, Chris and Clinton were close, of course.
And his brother-in-law, Hugh.
Oh, that's. Oh, okay, right.
Hugh Rodham would come and play.
I mean, Clinton, those days were so different. I mean, because with social media didn't exist and all that. But Clinton, we all know Clinton. Clinton was the greatest back then. I mean, the character really cared. He probably talked to every employee here, right? Sometimes their ear off. Even them, okay, Mr. President, right, you want to go to bed.
Well,
right?
the thing that he would drive crazy is the Secret Service, because he'd golf, but when he'd see people around the course, he'd go to talk to them.
He would get off, right. He would lose his train of thought. Yeah.
And we had Secret Service with high-powered rifles.
Right.
I always thought they better not reach into their pocket while they were talking to Clinton.
You want to be surprised about something? No, maybe you won't be surprised. I think I'm the only person maybe tell me this, that got Secret Service to laugh while they're the president and smile. That probably makes sense. That didn't happen that often, right?
Not often.
Quick story. Do you remember General McCaffrey came here? President Clinton appointed him drug czar. Remember, so somehow, like always, I was a kid. Was at 94? I was in my 20s still. I managed to maneuver myself. Presidential motorcade, this and that. We're on the tarmac, and I had a Secret Service pin. They weren't bothering me. He's with the kids. It was the Defia kids. General McCaffrey. Here's introducing him. I decide, Fred Menachem, of course, I will not, not talk to him on the tarmac. So I start chasing him. Mr. President, Mr. President. Finally, he turns around. Secret Service guy's dying laughing, trying to hold it. He looks at me. He's like, Menachem, only you. And he comes up, whatever. And that was Bill Clinton. But I did get the Secret Service guy to smile and laugh. And I'm very proud of that. Okay. So,
well, Barry McCaffrey did.
Oh, General McCaffrey, right. He's so for the folks.
And I got to know him because remember when they were moving Southcom, which
is the base, right? No,
the base, but the question, where was it going to be? And Miami, were competing against Atlanta, and that's when who was the Speaker of the House from Georgia?
Newt Gingrich.
Was trying, right. And also Louisiana was the other possibility.
Wait, who's Edwin Edwards?
Well, Edwards came he was an interesting fellow.
All the Louisiana politics, I wish we had more time. Huey Long, that's interesting. I remember I taught bags of cash. I'm joking. No, I'm not joking, because back then there was no law. You realize that they could I'm serious. One time, I remember they said, Louisiana started doing it. Can we bring it back cash? I'm like, no, sir, that is not something we can do here. But true, Louisiana. But okay, let me ask you, all these powerful personalities came here. You got to know them. And I know, you're a classic hotel, you're a taste of the food still. But what I want to know is, that's not really what you're about, Gene. You're the employees. You're about what really made you tick. Like, what do you think got you up in the morning every day? Like, what pushed you? You never stopped. You worked late, early in the morning.
It's part of it. And look, you have a work ethic, and you got to make sure you see everything. And then I find it interesting to meet people, to interact, and I like to read. I read a lot. Both for business as well as for world events and political events. So find that of interest.
I love you. I love this. This guy, we're going to get an extra 10 minutes. Come on, I'm going to push these guys. But I want to read you something. And before I move into legacy and all your community service, and I think, what it means to hand something over sacred too. This is a lot of transition now. And I want to pause and bring in a voice that also carries weight in this community. And you're about to know who it is, my dear friend, and I won't tell you yet, who cares deeply about you. Look, a lot of people have come and go in politics here. We talk about that, and that's life, but there's certain people who stay with you, and thank God I'm one of them, and I'm so fortunate. But, I think this person built a legacy in the same civic era, right, that you helped shape, this small town, right, you're building from the roots. And then when he heard you were joining the podcast, he said, let me send a message. I'm going to read it to you, because it's more than a kind note. It's a moment of acknowledgement, I think, between two men who really helped steer this community. So, Fred, I was so happy to hear that you'll be having Gene on the podcast. Please send him my best. Lily and I think the world of him. And frankly, there are a few people more responsible for what Greater Miami has become than Gene Prescott. Gene saw the city's potential long before it became the global metropolis it is today. And I'm not just talking about the iconic Biltmore Hotel. His vision, his leadership, his kindness, and quiet influence helped shape the Miami we know now. He's someone I deeply admire. I'm proud to call a friend, and I miss him. Good luck with the podcast. I hope that I get to see Gene again very soon. Former Miami-Dade County Mayor Alex Spinellis. Well, he pushed, and I know you had a great relationship with him.
No, I admired and admire him tremendously.
I know. I worked for him for years. Poor Gene. He said, Gene, come on. I should need a little more fundraising. Right. I would tell that story. I actually want to tell that story quick. You don't remember it, but I don't care. I was a fundraiser, and I think I'm the only fundraiser where this ever happened. I called Gene, as always, and Gene had a soft spot for me. I'm like, Gene, for whatever campaign it was, I need another $10,000. He's like, I'm going to kill you. But with a smile, I pushed, and I said, Gene, I promise you, I'm going to work at the end of the quarter, and if I'm able to get to that point, I'm giving you these checks back, and I'm tearing them up. And I walked in your office, and I said, I hit my number, and I did that. How many other fundraisers have ever done that, Gene?
Not too many.
And that's but that's love, zero.
Yeah.
And that was really the way I felt about you, because most people come in that world that's cut and run. Give me the checks, no relationship for me. And I want to move into one thing. And God, we have an extra few minutes, but talk to me. I think that's really where you were different, and that's where I was different. It was about relationships first, which leans into, and let's talk quickly about your civic engagement in this community, because you went above and beyond. Yes, some of it's business at the time. FIU, Latin Builders Association. God, I mean, I can keep going on. I mean, I'm forgetting all of this, but all of it. But talk for a minute about that community engagement and how that makes you.
Some of the ones you mentioned, FIU's been dear to my heart.
Yeah.
Because we have 50, 60 of our employees who go to FIU. And in fact,
really?
Before and even now. I mean, we have
the culinary.
Excuse me, they're going to all of but FIU. And in fact, the former president, Mitch Medic, called me and said, Gene, you've got to be involved because we're taking care of your employees. And I did a count, and we had like 50, and it's still a similar number. And then I've been a trustee.
Right? Sorry.
Just finished being a 5-year term as trustee of FIU. So I'm biased because I hear of their progress, and they're so important in the community.
Two things. One, and again, without getting into politics, but with all the anti-Semitism going on in the colleges, they got an A, one of the only schools. And I want to get into something for a moment because Jeanette Nunez is here now. And she's coming up on the podcast. Okay. And I think that she's new to this, I think she's doing a great job. And you've been spending time.
Will see. Right. To be president of a university with all the different groups, it's very difficult. You got the faculty, which is tough to manage.
Right.
You've got the alumni. You've got the students, which is supposedly your primary goal. Getting money from the state.
Right.
It's a big, big job. That's why they're paid a lot of money, because there's few that are successful. We'll see if Jeanette, look, her difficulty has been she hasn't had academic experience and expertise. And the faculty, in fact,
is tough,
are negative. Well, they are. They are tough, and it's hard. It's hard.
But if you surround yourself with the right people, like anything, we'll see. And I wish her, by the way, much success. I want her to do well. An amazing, and I'm going to give the shout out real quick. Michelle Palacio, Al Lorenzo's daughter. She has been.
Michelle is one of the best I've seen on dealing with the legislators. She understands the process in Tallahassee. She understands the people. She works hard at it. No, she's very good.
Good person. And
she is.
Okay. So, God, give me one thing when it comes to the community. How would you just, not finalize, but talk about how important it was to you, why it matters, and how it wasn't just about a hotel. It was about really putting roots down. And why, how much does that mean to you? And
Well, it means a lot. Look, how are we defining ourselves and our position in a community? And we do it as a professional aspect, personal, social, and it's important. It's important for us to stay involved in this. And this community was particularly. I had, you remember when they had the Elin? Remember Elin? Remember the kid that
Elian you're talking about? Oh my God! Let's talk. Tell me, go through that. How did that Biltmore play a role in that?
We didn't play the exact role, except that it was that I heard that a group of Cubans were thinking they were gonna boycott the Biltmore because it was close to Janet Reno, but to the Clintons. So thank goodness I had some friends and we squashed that. But no, there were high emotions during that time.
There was, this community, and I think I want to do this again to talk. There's history too, right? There's so much we can do today, but my God, and the Biltmores played a role in all of that in some way or the other. It's uncomplicated, but this has been, talking about Janet Reno, we're talking about presidents, and I'm going to say two things. And again, I think I'm moving time-wise, and I think you'll agree with this. You never thought about diversity in the sense of you just believed in that, right? It wasn't something you wasn't strategic. It wasn't, you just, and what do you think, if you could give me just a quick understanding of why? I'm saying why that was like how, and when I say why, I know why, but what in life just sort of made you the person who didn't look at people that way. What do you think?
I think background, biggest reason, and then a genuine feeling that that's what is right. And you and I we all have a feeling on a moral code, what is right, and it's just correct. It just tears my heart to see the difficulty that we have in the country these days.
Diversity, you said, it's always been something, right? You embraced it when the community was still not embracing it. I mean, that was just trajectory. You came here, right? And so let's talk about now, because I think that this is something that we're talking about passing the torch. Nobody's passing the torch, by the way. Gene is here. I mean, but this is so important. The Prescott legacy, family, always very important to you, right? I mean, more than anything, right? And that's
very important, very important. And it's been a pleasure that Tom has picked up, as you say, the torch. And in fact, there's always a concern. You bring a family member into the business. What if they don't work out? And I have some good friends where it hasn't worked out. And as a result, they had to sever the relationship. But in my case with Tom, he's exceeded my expectations, thank goodness. And I feel good about it. You know, you hope that him standing on, so to speak, my shoulders, and he can take us to a greater height.
You know, I think that I've known you a long time. The other side of you can be tough, right? A little curt at times. I mean, that's how you. But I've watched you. I mean, admittedly, as a father, right? As a hotelier, you've softened over the years for sure, right?
Softened, and I don't look. Well, they used to say Jack Kennedy had Bobby, so he didn't have to be the
son of a bitch
guy.
Right?
Yes.
Right.
So I can be less.
Well, that's true. I mean, I saw you. Listen, you know, you're much different, and then everybody with your kids and grandson. I saw your grandson here. You know, you hug and love, but even me, you love. I mean, you always had a soft spot for me, but you always knew I've gone through stuff, mental health, and I've struggled in this community. I don't think that's any secret. You didn't talk. I mean, you asked if I was okay, but you always were here. Email you, call you, always accepted. You had a meal with me. You took your time, and that's who you are. So we're talking about Tom. Okay. I sat with you at lunch, and you said to me, I said, how's it going, right? You're like, it's amazing, but you said, it's hard, right? I'm watching everything still, right? I'm looking at everything. I mean, it's still a bit tough, right? Because the hotel's changing. I mean, it has to be digitized, right? The world's different, but there was a little bit at the beginning, right? Like nerves, a little bit, right?
Oh, sure. Look, it's a concern.
Yeah?
Yeah. But it's worked out well.
I love your son, by the way. I make him smile. You know, he's actually gotten to know him. At the beginning, he looked at me like this guy's insane. But really, Tom.
I wonder why people would think that.
I wonder why as well. Right. Exactly. Right. But the guy who reads people gets it, right? You got me all the time, right? You told me sometimes, like, let me finish my words. But right, some people would think I'm insane for sure. But I think there's a really, at the end of the day, some smartness.
No question.
Yeah, thank you. I was trying to get a compliment. Maybe brilliance. Come on, Gene. Right. Right.
Your words I would accept.
And but my words are love, and I think that's why we've stayed so close. So okay. So talking about the 100-year anniversary is coming up. It's a pretty symbolic event, right? You're having a big. How does that feel?
Oh, that's a big milestone for us. Big milestone. So we're going to have a lot of events around that. So we'll come forth with a more extensive program.
You know, what you build in life, right? And the stuff you build means nothing if you can't outlive you, can't pass your kids. I'm saying that's the world we live in. Everybody's gonna. How does that feel? I mean, you built something that you could pass, right?
Absolutely.
And that's the Prescott legacy. Talk about that for a moment.
Well,
and why?
That certainly is gratifying because, as you say, and as you know, be able to pass something on you've built to those family members, and for family members to respond as Tom has. So very gratifying.
You feel good? The Prescott. Yes. What's the most important thing to you? I mean, community. Why am I answering for you? What do you want to? No, I know I can't help it. You know, Gene. But
look, I agree with you. You're.
I already know, right? I can cut up, but I know you, and I think you recognize. You probably didn't know that I really could. I can read people too. I mean.
Oh yes, you certainly can.
So, but I want to answer for you. What's the most important thing? Passing on. You know.
Look, the fact that
not passing away. I don't mean it like that. Just to be clear, passing on the hotel wise and all of that, and something so important to you.
It's important, and of course, we're talking about the Biltmore, but also the other property, the Sheraton St. Key, is important. We have cold storage warehouses that we still have up in the New York City area. So some activities in the ranch, as I say. And Tom,
You still have the ranch, right?
Oh, yes. Yes. In fact, I'm going out there next week.
Cowboy boots? Come on, man.
Oh,
I've
of
seen you in
course.
boots. I mean, I've seen you in boots.
Oh,
Yeah.
of course. And
Yeah.
a cowboy hat.
Yeah.
That's a pain to carry on the plane.
Yeah, but it's okay. You got to turn it backwards. People don't know that. I've always had hats, right?
Yes.
They put it this way. You don't steam them. Yeah, no one's Alabama. So okay, ranch, but that's business. So you want to finish that statement, and then what you saying about business? Passing that on.
Yeah.
You were saying you just
No, that is gratifying. And again,
Personally.
I see that your kids and to see the grandkids are growing up and doing well, going to good schools, and it's being academically
Royce, right?
successful.
Royce
Royce
was
is one.
Royce was working here. Now he's working in another hotel, right?
He works
Yeah.
at the St. Regis out
Yeah.
in Aspen. Mm-hmm.
So, he had the same reason. How many kids, grandkids? Real quick. You. No, how many kids? How many grandkids do you have?
Three kids, and Tom, and 7 grandkids.
Okay, Tom, come here for a second. Come on. We gotta come on, Tom, where are you? Come here for a minute. Come on. I mean, I'm pulling you. It's a podcast. We have to be so professional. Tom Prescott, the son, an amazing human being. I've gotten to know him a little bit. At first, I thought I was crazy, but maybe a little bit. But this is Tom. This is love. Tom, how do you feel?
Let me come on this side.
Yeah.
Let me come over here.
Yeah. How do you feel with all of this? It's a lot on your shoulders, right?
It is. It's a challenge, both in terms, as Dad said, and I'm not just saying this because he's sitting next to me. So when you have an icon like a father like him, to stand on his shoulders and try to propel everything that he's achieved even further forward. So I am hopeful that I do that. I strive for it. I couldn't do it without a great team, of course, that we have, and that really makes a difference.
Like Maureen Holden, who I've been working with a lot, right? Head director of marketing, right?
But most of the team, and one thing
Yeah, of
Dad
course.
obviously instilled in all of us, myself, my sisters, was that notion of both hard work, honest work, being people of good character, and then, of course, surrounding yourself with the right people that share that vision, that share those same characteristics, because it makes a difference. It really does, especially here. And one thing Dad alluded to earlier that we're most proud of, for instance, here at the Biltmore, is that we have over 46 countries, backgrounds represented here. So think about that versus a typical hotel. So something we're proud of.
So real quick, I know I got to know you a little bit. I think quickly, actually, very quickly. Right. Oh, sure, whatever. You get bureaucrat, right? We're not talking about Tom's history in government, all that. He was skeptical at first, but not anymore, I think. So, your dad softened over the years, of course, right? It would jump, a little bit, but that's it's everything. But now there's love, right? Tremendous love. I see it, right? There's.
Yeah, I mean, I would take a little issue. This is not the same man I grew up with.
No, of course not. But that's.
It was much more rigid in a lot of ways on all of us. I'm not saying it's just me. It was all of his children. And he is a different man with his grandkids. With my kids directly, I have to say, they're just like, oh, grandpa's great. I'm like, what? Grandpa?
What?
But I'm sure that happens with a lot of parents.
That's always, we always, but he did teach you good values. And let me tell you something. I see the love now. And I see a son who cares so much about his father. That's how it works. I'm with Dad, Fred. I'll call you back up. The love that I see is so beautiful to me because that's how I feel about you. So I got to read something. And then, God, I want to do some more of this, but give me a last line about what's the whole legacy? What does this all mean to you? 100 years coming up, both business and personal. What do you want to leave here?
I can only say my part and then let Dad close it out.
Yeah.
I mean, what he was able to build, if you think about it, the Prescott family has been about a third of the life through this centennial of this landmark. The people that we have here, the generations of families that have come through that work with us, all of those things are something that, as Dad pointed out, make us really proud. So that legacy just from this historic landmark alone is something that you can't really replicate in a lot of places.
No.
That just from that aspect, the thing that I'm really proud of, and I think Dad would echo this sentiment, is the fact that as a legacy, as family, the fact that we've had a positive impact, we believe, on communities, on the people that we interact with, and the people that we touch. Everything going back to the original hurricane that Dad mentioned, the Hurricane Andrew.
Opening up
doing that, serving as an emergency evacuation center, and the impact it had on the community, literally within blocks of here, you don't find that often. And so that's been something that people have come up to me and talked about Dad and what that meant for them and their family and the trajectory of their family. He references FIU. And the fact that we have people that come here and work in the hospitality sector with us, that they're first gen getting their degrees, and that
Beautiful.
held for them as a family, what that means. All of those things together are what kind of define a legacy. And it's something that I give Dad credit for, because speaking candidly, here's this gringo coming into South
It's true, of course.
and
Right.
he's able to do that and build those ties, and everything that we built through our expanded, family network. It really is a legacy that will live long, way past us. And we just hope that the rest of our family, of course, continues in that trend, whatever they decide to do.
But that's why I do this. You know why I'm doing this, right? Because you get it. I mean, this is important, what we're doing. Yeah. And so, Gene, last words, man, real quick, and I got to read something, and then.
No, but thank you. Thank you, Fred.
I love you, just so you know.
I do know that, and I feel the same about you.
Through the years, you're going to make me cry. I'm serious. I'm emotional. I'm serious. I love you a lot, man. And I'm glad we did this. I'm crying, actually. I am. I wanted to do this for years, and it's very special to me. And God, what's wrong with me? I'm not supposed to cry in public, but no, it's true.
Go ahead and edit that part out.
So, look, no, it's fine. I don't need to edit it out.
Well, I'm trying to hold hard.
Yeah, I know, whatever. You're right. You're holding it up. Okay. So, in a city that often trades memory for momentum, you never chase the spotlight. You build the stage, not just for presidents and galas and fundraisers, but for neighbors, for not-for-profits, and the people who've made this city breathe. You restored more than a hotel. You restored something in this community, the belief that places can have soul, that first-generation folks can the opportunity for them to build generational, success. Leaders can serve without asking for applause, which you never did. And that legacy, it's not a brand. It's authentic, it's genuine, it's a torch. And now you're passing that next torch to the next generation of Prescotts, not just in name, but in values, in stewardship, and in love. And let me be clear, this is not the end. It's the next chapter for Gene, right? There's so much he's going to do. And I hope we can do some things together, charitably and in the community. But you didn't just build something to stand. You built something and someone to carry it forward for the Prescott name and for everybody in this community. So, Gene, thank you for what you've done for me, for this community. Thank you for making everybody's lives better. You've made a difference. You continue to make a difference. And I love you a lot, man.
Thank you very much, Fred.
Tommy, give me all you. Come here. Thank you.
Thank you.